Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I call to order this public hearing, which is convened under the provisions of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to the proposed bylaws. All persons who believe that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaws shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed bylaws. I would ask those members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this board by clearly stating your name. The board will not debate the matters of a proposed bylaw with individual citizens, but members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. First hearing is bylaw number 2824, which would rezone a portion of 5665 Lac Lejeune Road in Lac Lejeune from LRT2, existing Lakeshore Resort Zone, to LR1, Lakeshore Residential Single Family Zone, to enable the creation of a new Lakeshore residential parcel, approximately 5,400 square meters, 1.33 acres, and remainder comprising a lakeshore resort. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any written submissions?
Chair, there were no written submissions received by this prior to the deadline or afterwards.
Thank you. Are there any in-person submissions? Anyone here who would like to speak to this? I'm going to call a second time for in-person submissions. I'm going to call a third and final time for in-person submissions. There being no speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Second hearing, bylaw number 2833 would rezone 1256 Hearn Road in Blackpool from R1 residential single and duplex zone to CR1 country residential zone to allow agricultural and horticultural use subject to livestock regulations in section 3.24 of zoning bylaw number 2400. There have been some written submissions which are part of your agenda package. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any further written submissions?
Thank you, Chair. As you identified, there were written submissions that were received prior to the agenda dispatch, which were included in the original agenda. There were subsequent written submissions received after the agenda was published, but before the deadline for written submissions, which were attached to the agenda when it was republished. So you should have 3 additional items there, and there were no written submissions received after that point.
Thank you very much. Are there any in-person submissions? Thank you, sir. If you could state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Dan Massey. A neighbor of ours had put in a late submission. I don't know if it's eligible, if I can submit it on their behalf.
Mr. Corporate Officer, I believe we have to get confirmation from the writer that they are willing to have this shared, and then I believe it would have to be read publicly in full to everyone, subject to the author's approval.
Thank you, Chair. That would definitely, I think, be best. Essentially, if there is a person doesn't need to be physically present in order to make a submission, but we do need to know who the submission is coming from and that they have provided authorization for it to be entered into the record, as they did not provide it in written form in advance prior to the deadline.
Do we have any proof from the author that they've authorized you, for example, to read this into the public record?
The only thing I can say is that it is addressed from their email address. There was a response from the planning department that it was a late submission, but I don't know if that would be suitable.
Mr. Corporate Officer?
Chair, I think on that one, I would have to say that's essentially your discretion or the board's. Under the Local Government Act, you may set the rules for how the public hearing is to be run. So the level of proof that you require to consider a submission adequate is essentially up to you in this matter.
So you have the email that was sent to our planning department. Did our planning department acknowledge it?
Correct. I have the email sent from the sender plus the response from your planning department.
All right. Well, if you'd like to read it, and sorry, Mr. Corporate Officer, does he have to read the response from the planning department as well, or simply the initial submission?
Chair, the requirement at a public hearing is that all of the information which is being considered needs to be available. So if there is any new information that the planning department provided in response to a letter, that would need to be included so that people could speak to it. But if there, it is simply reiterating information that was already known, that is not required.
Okay. Okay. All right, if you'd like to proceed.
Okay, you're just looking for me to read the submission by the neighbor?
You can read it, or you can have, I can read it aloud. Can I read it aloud? If you'd like me to read it for you, I can do that, or if you're comfortable doing it,
I'm
that's,
comfortable doing
that's
it.
perfectly fine then. I'll just ask you to make sure you're close enough to the mic so that people can hear you, particularly those who are online.
Certainly. Okay, it says, hello, TNRD representatives. I'm writing this in regards to amendment application. I am the owner of Lot 1, Plan 23857. I have visited the property, which is seeking an amendment. It is super clean and the pens have been extremely well built. The owner and his family are trying to live more organically and healthy. In today's changing world, this is a very positive thing. We are fine with the zoning being changed. Thank you for your time, Alexandra Toma and Diane Toma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else to add?
The only thing that I would like to add as the property owner in regards to one of the complaints that was sent in regarding a pile of, they referred to it as a pile of manure that was seeping things into shallow wells. What's seen in that picture is a pile of dirt, and there is no manure pile of that size anywhere on the property, nor is there anything seeping into groundwater.
Okay, thank
That's
you very
about
much.
all I have to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to make an in-person submission regarding this? I'll call a second time for submissions. And calling a third and final time for submissions. There being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Third hearing, bylaw number 2838 would consider a site-specific amendment at 1585 Lance Road in Pritchard to enable a subdivision of the northeast corner of the subject property, creating a new 1,400 square meter parcel to provide a residence for a relative pursuant to section 514 of the Local Government Act. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any written submissions?
Thank you, Chair. There was just the single written submission on this item, which was attached to your agenda.
Thank you. Are there any in-person submissions? Sir? Thank you. If you could just say your name into the microphone.
Just had eye surgery, so I'm going to be slower yet. I'm Andy Bellog. I'm the proponent on this application. I'd like to thank you for your time again to review the documentation we provided to the TNRD regarding this parcel of land. The submission from Mr. Wallace is extensive and totally complete. We have seen the documentation you have seen the documentation several times before, but due to government rules, government bureaucracy, it did not come to fruition. As the package emphasizes, we now are in compliance with all requests from different agencies and are prepared to accept subdivision of the property as proposed. I am in full agreement with the conclusion, as Dan Wallace has stated in his approval and support of the proposed application as stated as a site-specific request. With this approval, we hope to get a few more years of living on this property with the support that we require as we age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone, any questions from anyone? No? Are there any other in-person submissions? I'm going to call a second time for submissions. And calling a third and final time for in-person submissions. Right, there being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. This does not mean the directors get to leave. She added hastily. All right, I call to order this meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, March the 7th, 2024. The TNRD acknowledges that we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district and today are located in the Tecumloops-Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumloops-Secwepemc and respect the territory and land on which we gather today. So, Chair's announcements. Flags across the city, including the one outside the TNRD building, have been lowered to half-mast in memory of the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, Canada's 18th Prime Minister, who died peacefully surrounded by his family on February 29th, 2024 at the age of 84. The flags will stay at half-mast until sunset on the day of his memorial service. Friday, March the 8th, tomorrow, people around the country will come together to celebrate International Women's Day 2024, which recognizes and celebrates women's social, economic, cultural, and political achievements. This year's campaign theme is Inspire Inclusion. When we inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion, we forge a better world. And when women themselves are inspired to be included, there's a sense of belonging, relevance, and empowerment. On March 8th, please let's celebrate the women of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, our staff and board members alike, and collectively let's forge a more inclusive world for women. On behalf of the hospital district, all directors are invited to attend the Kamloops Blazers game this Saturday, March the 9th, to join the Cancer Won't Wait campaign. The campaign has been invited to drop the puck, and there will be a booth set up on the concourse with information about the campaign. If you would like to attend, please reach out to Mr. Kelly. I'll let people fight out who gets to drop the puck. We have no alternate directors attending today. Director Sao has been able to be with us. I'm sure he did not break any speed limits on the Coquihalla Highway. Positive. Yes, he's a multitasker. He was determined to be at those meetings. And Director Blackwell, who is joining us from Zoomland, not from a vehicle. We have a library announcement. The Ashcroft Library is delighted to announce that it held its first tiny art show. How tiny? I'm sure you're asking yourself. The canvases were 5 by 5 inches, which is about that, I'm guessing. And you were able to pick up a free kit at the library with your 5 by 5 inch canvas and everything you needed to create your own masterpiece. And 38 people took them up on that. And they are, well, it says 4 by 4. It said 5 by 5 in the newspaper. I think we're talking fake news here. That's terrible. Anyway, they are tiny. 38 people responded and they are on display in the library. And for those of you who can't make it to Ashcroft, they're also available to view online. You can go to www.tnrl.ca. You can view all of them individually and you can vote on your favorite. So, Chair's update, 2 announcements, and they are kind of Ashcroft centric, but I'm mentioning them because they have regional implications. The first is the Ashcroft Farmers Market, which is a registered farmers market started by a group of 4 dedicated women, one from Spence's Bridge, Janelle Robelin, the wife of Andrew Robelin, our waste recyclables manager. And these 4 women, all of whom have young children, decided to start a registered farmers market in Ashcroft last year, and very successful, attracting vendors from all over the TNRD, from Ashcroft, from Cache Creek, from Clinton, from 100 Mile, from 70 Mile, from Savinon, Wallachine, from some from the Lytton area, I believe. And at the convention of farmers market convention at the weekend in North Vancouver, they won the award for community impact in their first year. So very pleased for them. serving a huge area. It just happens that they're based in Ashcroft. And the other one is much the same, and that is our Ashcroft Hub, which a group of volunteers, again, 5 women, took over the elementary school in Ashcroft when it closed in 2015. Didn't want to see it ugly itself away, and they turned it into a community hub. It now gets 3,000 visitors a month, offers everything from a full gym to Zumba to pickleball to pottery classes to painting to a dance music studio. Musicians go there, theater productions. And last week, the federal government announced their Canada's Volunteer Awards, and the Ashcroft Hub was named the winner for BC and the North in social innovation. So that's great recognition again for, and a reminder that good things happen in small communities and good things happen in rural BC. The Ashcroft Hub again happens to be based in Ashcroft, is used by groups from Lytton, from Spence's Bridge, from Wallachine, Savanaugh, Clinton, Cache Creek, Loon Lake, and people come to it from all over. So it really is a hub, and it's wonderful to see the recognition going to our small communities and to the volunteers in our small communities. If all the volunteers left our communities tomorrow, there would be nothing left. So just wanted to give a shout out to that. Good things happen in small places. Upcoming meetings and events. Wednesday, March the 20th, the Policy and Governance Committee will be meeting at 10 a.m. Thursday, March the 21st at 10 a.m. We will have the inaugural Hospital District Board meeting. On Thursday, March 21st at 1:30, there will be a regular board meeting, and you will have regular mail in your blue folders. All right. Are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda? Oh, CAO Hildebrandt, yes. I didn't write it down. Oh, 2 things. One, I did write down the elevator. We're having some issues with the elevator. So if the lights go on when you push the button, then it's working fine, probably. If you are at all uncertain or dubious, please speak with staff and they will arrange another way for you to make it to the bottom, to the ground floor without having to take the stairs. And I'll leave you to discover what that method is. Shh, don't give it away. And CAO Hildebrandt has an announcement to make.
Thank you, Chair Roden. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. Hope all are well. I just wanted to take a brief moment and introduce our new Executive Assistant, Livia Costantino. She is sitting right back here, right beside the media, so hopefully he's not doing an interview at the time. We are very excited to have Livia join the TNRD and is already starting to fit in very nicely. Livia brings 25 years of administrative knowledge and experience to our organization and will be a great addition to our team. Her experience includes roles with TRU, with the Ajax Mine, and most recently BCLC. Livia will be reaching out to each of you to connect and get to know you better. So please join me in welcoming Livia to the TNRD.
Thank you and welcome. All right, now, are there any additions to or deletions from the agenda? No? All right, we have the minutes of the regular board meeting from February the 15th.
Move the minutes.
Vice Chair Smith, thank you. Director Sarai, second. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Bylaws from public hearing, zoning amendment bylaw number 2824. And we do have 2 staff recommendations.
Chair Roden?
Yes.
I apologize. We wouldn't normally interject at this point, but I do, in order for strict compliance with the Local Government Act, I do need to draw the meeting's attention to Director Graham was not present for the public hearing, although he has now managed to make the meeting. Under the Local Government Act, he now essentially has a choice. He can either leave this meeting and not vote on the matters that he was not present for the public hearing, or alternatively, we can brief him on the contents of the public hearing and he may then proceed to vote. So that's
This is a new one to me. That's very interesting. All right.
We'll fix the elevator.
You're doing it, okay. And Vice Chair Smith was not here either for the public hearing.
It was quick.
Thank you very much. I hadn't actually been looking in a straight line, so yes, we can either brief you both or you can both leave.
So
the room
if
at this
you could
point.
give the TLDR, too long didn't read version of the public hearings, that would be much appreciated.
I absolutely can, Chair. So the public hearing was convened for 3 items. Zoning amendment bylaw number 2824, that's 5665 Lac Lejeune Road, did not have any public submissions at the public hearing. The second item for bylaw 2833, that's at 1256 Hearn Road, Blackpool, BC. That had some written submissions that were included in your agenda. And in addition, Dan Massey spoke on behalf of Alexandra and Diane Toma, the owners of Lot 1, Plan 23857, stating that they had visited the property. They felt it was super clean. The pens were extremely well built, and that the owner and the family wanted to live organically and healthily. He wanted to add that the property owner had said regarding complaints and the argument made about a pile of manure seeping into shallow wells. He saw a pile of dirt. There was no manure pile of that size on the property, nor anything seeping into groundwater. And on the third public hearing, bylaw 2838, that's 1585 Lance Road, Pritchard, BC. There was a written submission on your agenda, and Andy Belog noted to, he spoke to thank you, the board for their consideration, noted that the proposal was extensive and complete, and due to government rules, it had not previously come to fruition, but it was totally compliant, and he was looking to move forward. And those were all of the public submissions made at the hearing.
Thank you very much for that summary, Mr. Corporate Officer. All right, so 7.1, zoning amendment bylaw number 2824. We have two staff recommendations. Is that Director Getz? Thank you. Seconded by Director Thorpe. Discussion. Any discussion on this? Be read a third time. Director Blackwell, no. All right then. And Director Blackwell, because you are online, we do have to hear you. Thank you. Thumbs up. Excellent. No, not a thumbs up. You have to, it's all right. All right. So on the motion, all those in favor?
And I don't know if you can,
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, you can hear me now, so I'm off of mute. I,
Okay, thank you. All those, anyone opposed? All right, that is carried. We have a second recommendation. Director Middleton, seconded by Director Getz. Thank you. Discussion? On the question then, all those in favor? Didn't hear you.
in favor.
Thank you. All, anyone opposed? That is carried. Item number 7.2, we have zoning amendment bylaw number 2833. Sorry, Director Houghton, seconded by Director Thorpe. Thank you. Any discussion? Director Stamer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This question is to, first question is to Director Zhao. I guess on the water end of things, is there any groundwater concerns? I didn't see that in the report. So do you know of anything? Maybe Mr. Kraus can answer that as well, but I'm just, that's your area, isn't it?
Thank you, Chair, through Chair to Director Stamer. Actually, that's one of the questions I would like to ask staff as well. When the AAC made the recommendations, yes, they made the recommendations based on one property, the applicant's property, but we also have to look at the consideration of, this is a precedent. This will set precedent for the rest of the area to be rezoned as well. Yes, one property, being rezoned is fine for the groundwater, but have they considered, is this part of the consideration during the reports? And I have other questions as well.
Thank you. Thank you through the chair. So groundwater is obviously a question. That's not something that's looked at by staff. There are groundwater wells in the area. So obviously if there's small lots and if there is manure on the property, then there could be concern that it goes into groundwater wells, but that's not something that was examined through this process. In terms of precedent, it doesn't actually set zoning precedent. So the board can in theory approve this and not approve any others. There might be political precedent or other pressure to approve more and not just the one. But just because you approve this one doesn't mean that the entire neighborhood gets it. they would have to apply one by one, and in theory, the board could turn down all others, for example.
Director Stamer?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. To staff, then, why wouldn't this be included in the report if there could be negative impacts caused in a rezoning of this application? I'm not suggesting that there is if they're small animals, but if they were large animals, why wouldn't there be that put into the report? Because let's face it, if one of those other properties was mine, that could that could negatively impact my water in my well. So why wouldn't that be part of the report?
Certainly, and through the chair, staff, the board can ask for that report, and then the applicant should go back, hire a private consultant to do that study. We don't have in-house expertise that could look at that. So that is something that the board can ask of an applicant. We typically don't ask for studies like that up front until it has gone through a public process, because otherwise we're asking an applicant to pay potentially a lot of money to do that report, but the board can absolutely do that. Then we would get that information back. We would need a new public hearing because that would be new information. And then the board can make their decision from there. So it's absolutely still an option for the board.
Thank you. I have Director Sow and then Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Chair. So we can make a motion that the application be subject to a groundwater study.
Through the chair, yes. So you could request that the applicant provide a groundwater study, and then that information would come back to the board before you decide on third reading.
And in your experience, typically, how much do these cost?
Yeah, through the chair, it really depends, but it's definitely in the thousands.
Okay, thank you. You know, so just this is more of a comment. You know, in Area A, I am 100% for food security, and I believe the applicant is a regular vendor at our Clearwater farmers markets. And we're, you know, reducing carbon footprint by reducing trucking of produce from out of community. But yes, I won't go into I believe about the odor. We've had some written submissions on neighbors, both saying that they haven't noticed any, and then the other saying that they have. So I'm not gonna, personally, for me, I'm not gonna wade into that one. But the groundwater is the concern, because yes, food security, but if we turn out that you know, we kind of destroy the livability of the area due to groundwater contamination, that's a major concern. Thank you for bringing that up, Director Stamer. So I would be in favor of asking for a groundwater study before we subject. Other than that, I would be in favor. Yeah.
Thank you. We have Director Thorpe and then Director Stamer, you have a supplemental? Thank you. Director Thorpe?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions with respect to the wells, they're groundwater or, you know, shallow wells. What would be the difference with the septic then? Your septic field, would that not potentially impact the wells as well? No pun intended there. And the other question would be around if somebody was putting fertilizers on the land or actually spreading manure for their, it shut off, sorry, if for spreading fertilizer or manure for their gardens. And then I have a supplemental, but what would be the difference?
Sure, through the chair. So with septic, a registered professional has to design the septic system, and they have to actually look at setback distances to wells. In this case, there wouldn't be a professional. Nobody would be looking at where the manure piles are. So we wouldn't be able to measure those distances. As part of a groundwater study, I would imagine that's what the professional would be looking at, to see the distances. Where are the actual wells of the neighbors? How far is it from this property? Where is manure being stored? But that would all require in-depth review of that property and something that would be done through that report. That's not something the staff could do. We don't have the in-house expertise to look at that.
Supplemental would be that I have goats and chickens too. My goats don't smell. Their manure doesn't seem to be particularly bad. The chickens can, if it's not maintained properly. And I know that the only time we really seem to have a problem in the summer personally is if we've got a sprinkler on the roof trying to cool the chicken coop, and something gets a little damp that hasn't been cleaned up in a timely manner. Otherwise, you don't know they're there, other than maybe my rooster crowing.
Director Stamer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of quick questions to staff in as much as that. Is there, when they rezone this to CR1, would that allow a new owner, say that comes in the future, that could possibly put large animals on this property? The property may not be able to sustain those animals. That's part of the reason why it's residential, not CR or SH1, because obviously you couldn't be able to, grow enough feed to be able to feed that horse or that cow. So my question is, in the future, can somebody else use that for a different use other than what these people are using it for? And can we have this approval strictly on the small animals and the chickens that they have now? And the supplement onto that is that, there's a couple of larger parcels in this area and there's a little swamp in the background. So I wouldn't want to say no to this application, knowing that the use that they're using right now is probably not negatively affecting that area, but I would certainly be looking at if any other, rezoning applications were going to be implementing that area, what would be the groundwater effects? And also, is there any effects coming from SH1 in the use of that? So is there a way, to answer my first part, can they put larger animals on it, or can it be just specific in smaller animals?
So in response, so through the chair, yes, the zoning runs with the land. And the zoning would enable 2 large livestock per acre. So they could have 2 large, 2 small, and 40 head of poultry. In this case, they have 6, because if the way the bylaw is worded, you can have additional small livestock in place of the large. But you're absolutely right. If you look at what combination could exist, they could have 2 large, 2 small plus 40, or 6 small. And that would run with the land. And so that owner could sell, the next person would have that, and they'd have the right to farming protection as well under BC law, once that zoning is in place. So you're absolutely right. And that is a factor here. We had discussed as well that an option would be a temporary use permit. That's another way of getting restrictions in and not having it run with the land. But what's applied for today would be quote unquote permanent. The board can always rezone that property, but then they have pre-existing grandfathered rights, even the next owner, as long as they continued that use.
Director Hamer Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if in the past or now in the future, if we're going to be needing to do groundwater studies on these type of applications. And if there was other applications that we needed a groundwater study, because my thinking is that the property owner is going to be more concerned about the groundwater, that they're going to be having on their own property. So I think that, they're the ones that are going to be the most affected by it. So I think if they're going to be drinking bad water, it's not going to happen for very long. And they're probably going to be able to correct that on their own, or they all might not be here.
Thank you. And Director Sao?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In light of Director Thorpe and Director Stamer, as well as Director Hamer Jackson's sharing of their knowledge, I would like to retract that requesting a groundwater test before we proceed to the next stages of this application. Thank you.
So you do not want to press on that issue? You're happy with the amendment, the motion as it stands?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? I see a hand up in the gallery. I'm afraid that you're not allowed to, yeah. Apologies. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, we do have the recommendation, which is that bylaw number 2833/2024 be read for a third time. Then I believe it has to go to Moti for consideration. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. I see nods. Awesome. All right, all those in favor? Is anyone opposed? Director Onslow opposed. Director Blackwell, how are you voting? Yay or nay?
In favor, yay.
Yay, thank you very much. So Director Onslow opposed. That carries, thank you. Item 7.3 zoning amendment bylaw number 2838.
I'll second that.
Director Houghton, thank you. Seconded by Director Stamer. Is there any, excuse me, any discussion on this? Discussion, comments? Seeing no hands in the air on the question, all those in favor?
Yay.
Thank you very much. Opposed, if any? That is carried. We move on to delegations, invited presentations, and first up, we have Day One Society, and we have a society member, Sean, or Executive Director, Sean Lewis, apologies, here to talk to us about Day One Society. So thank you I'm sorry, I see two people there. If you could just introduce yourselves, that would be wonderful, and then take it away, ladies.
Excuse me. Thank you so much. My name's Sean Lewis, as you mentioned, Executive Director with Day One Society, and I'm joined by my colleague Leanne Kapitko, who's a program supervisor with Day One Society. I'm going to apologize up front because this presentation is going to be a repeat performance for some of you in the audience, but it's pretty riveting. So hopefully, okay. Okay, and I trust this is my gizmo here, and I'm clicking the bottom, this arrow here. The big one. Okay, thank you. So we haven't presented to the Board of Directors for TNRD, so thank you so much for accepting us here today and welcoming our delegation. We are Day One Society, but there's a little bit of history here. In January 2023, we rebranded. We were originally known as Kamloops Society for Alcohol and Drug Services, kind of a mouthful. So we went through a rebranding and renaming, and now we're known as Day One Society. At our main facility, the Phoenix Center, which some of you may recognize that name, we offer our largest program, an inpatient detox service. The name change was inspired by our desire to have a society name that is meaningful and memorable and reflects the spirit and intention of our organization. To us, Day One represents the hope, the help, and the healing that is possible each and every day. Oh, I'm ahead of myself here. So I'm going to be sharing a few highlights in terms of statistics. They are high level, so I'll welcome questions afterwards. So we have served approximately 250 youth in our counseling program for youth and family support, where youth choose to involve family members or others who are close to them. We also provide support. Families can also reach out for support if they have concerns about a young person in their life. And staff direct them to resources, offer information, and provide brief interventions. Therefore, in addition to 250 youth that we served this past year, we also provided additional support to family and loved ones connected to those young people. We have served more than 900 clients on our inpatient detox, which is a 20-bed unit at the Phoenix Center facility. And those statistics are for 2023. But as of February 2024, so just recently, we opened 5 new beds, bringing our total inpatient bed count to 25. The 5 new beds are specific to detox services for those ages 13 to 24. Although we had previously served that same age group, but on the adult unit, we now have this separate wing of 5 beds for young people. Supportive Transitional Living and Recovery Program, that's an 8-bed adult programs, providing support to those who wish to reside in an abstinence-based living environment. This program offers a foundation for recovery, extending supports to adults in those earliest stages of recovery. And those folks can stay for up to a 6-month period. Upon completion, we are assisting them in transitioning to independent housing and continue on with their recovery. And we've maintained a 90% occupancy rate in this program for 2023, much needed and well-utilized program. Back to detox inpatient, I just wanted to note that 83% of the clients do successfully complete their stay with us, which means they complete their medical protocol, they successfully withdraw from the substances that are identified for them, and they typically carry on to some other form of support, whether it be in community or long-term treatment, for example. But that 83% is specific to their success while they're with us at the detox facility. Oh, why is this not working now? Okay, thank you. It's not paying attention to me. A slide, yeah, perfect. 6% of those that come to us for detox services are 24 years and younger. And the reason I point that out is because young people are less likely to reach out for specialized services such an inpatient detox stay. We anticipate this number will increase now that we have the 5 unique beds. But we do know from a study, there's many studies, I'm just going to refer to one in 2020, explored how people perceive and experience substance use services in BC, and report up to 98% are not going to see themselves as needing any specialized services. And that's important for us to understand. It's important because we need to let them know the services are available. It's important because we need to be paying attention to prevention and intervention as our primary activity. Yet at Day One Society, we're not mandated to do that work, but I know there are agencies in the community who do that very important work. And it's also important to let youth know of all the services that they have access, not just a specialized one, but any kind of service that may be of interest to them. And that's the key word, interest to them. We need to listen to youth where they're at. So although we might think a detox stay might be helpful, if they're not interested in that, we need to get creative and work alongside them and meet them where they're at. 32% of those that we serve identify as Indigenous. This is true for our detox, but also across all our program areas. And we continue to build and enhance our relationships with Indigenous communities to ensure our services offer culturally safe spaces and practices. Slide 6, please. Thank you. I don't think I need to tell you this. Addiction has become far more complex. Specific to detox, what this means is what was an average stay of 5 to 7 days pre-COVID is now a 13 to 14-day stay. So this impacts our occupancy, which in turn impacts our wait list because people are staying longer and taking up those beds for a longer period of time. But it's absolutely necessary. In specific, it's because of the benzodiazepines, so you're getting mixed into the illicit drug supply. And oftentimes the clients that come to us don't even know that they have consumed benzodiazepines. They were using other substances, but that mix of benzodiazepine makes that withdrawal that much longer and that much more difficult for the individual. And our staff do an amazing job of supporting them. Next slide, please. So on to recruitment. I will say this is my favorite topic, a little bit tongue in cheek there. As you know, nurses have been in very short supply across the province, if not across the country. We also have struggled with that. With the addition of the 5 new beds, we needed to attract more nurses. I'm happy to say that we only have 2 vacancies to fill, so we've come a long way. And that's a direct result of our funder, Interior Health Authority, agreeing as of this November 1st to allow us to offer signing bonuses as an incentive. So we only have 2 more positions to fill. We also have to bolster up our casual pool for nurses, but we're doing well. And we do have support from nursing agencies in the interim to ensure that we're providing the services in a safe manner on our unit. Okay, so the next slide, please. This is the fun part of our presentation. I'm very pleased to end our presentation with information about 2 awards that we have recently received. And the first is the Communitas Award, which is an international award recognizing excellence in community services. And this is specific to the Out of the Ashes bursary program. And Leanne Capitco, who's come with me, is not only a program supervisor, but she is the founder of the Out of the Ashes bursary. And she's just going to say a couple of words about this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name's Leanne Capitco. I'm a program supervisor for Day One Society, and I'm the founder and co-creator of the Out of the Ashes bursary. The Out of the Ashes bursary was created by my late husband, Ron Capitco, and I as I was in a new position in prevention at the center at that time, and we were looking to do something exciting and new for our community. And we come up together with this idea, and it's been amazing. It started in 2007. It's carried on every year. I really want to acknowledge and thank all of the business people and individuals in this community that have contributed and made donations to our bursaries. Without you, it wouldn't be possible for us to carry this on. And I also really want to acknowledge the recipients. We have amazing recipients year after year after year. Last year in 2023, we awarded 3 bursaries, and we're really excited to be able to continue to do this great work. I am so humbled and honored to receive this amazing, feels like an Academy Award. It's so heavy. dragging it up 4 flights of stairs, I say was a no easy feat today. And me and the ward and Sean are really happy to be here. I am really humbled to receive this award. It is such an incredible privilege, and I'm just really happy to be able to share it with you. It means so much to my late husband's family, the Kapitkos, who continue to donate and support this award, and to our children, Jake and Alyssa, who always are here to support me as well. Thank you so much.
And the next slide, this is just a quick acknowledgement as well of Creative News Creative Award that was for our film, 50 Years, One Day at a Time. I encourage you to go to our website, day1society.ca, and view this short film. And it's a beautiful depiction of people with lived experience of their path from addiction to recovery. We were recognized in 2 categories, a video short film and video nonprofit. And I'm proud to share that with the filmmaker Liam Hall of Kiwi Man Creative and our co-producer Elise Laird with Amplify Consulting. And that wraps up our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
Thank you for having us.
And congratulations, Leanne. And we're much better than the Academy Awards because we don't play you off the stage. No danger of that. Thank you for that presentation. And does anyone have any questions or comments for Sean or for Leanne? Director Sao?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just out of curiosity, are your services available to non-Kamloops residents, or is it just focused on Kamloops right now?
Yes. So Interior Health funds us, and it is considered a regional resource. So there is a detox similar to ours in Kelowna. Our statistics reflect pretty consistently 75% from the Thompson-Caribou region. The balance of that is mostly from the Okanagan. We get a low percentage sometimes from the Kootenays. Yeah.
Thank you, Director Sarai, and then Director Hamer Jackson.
Thank you so much for that presentation, and it still fills my heart, even hearing it second time from City Council to hear. And thank you for everything you do. My question, and I asked it then, and I just want to make sure, once a individual goes through detox, in your opinion, is there enough treatment and recovery after the fact? And do we see the same individuals coming back for repeat because those treatment and recovery beds aren't available?
Well, in part, the repeat visitors to our services and other services for substance use, it's the nature of the disease or issue itself. It's not necessarily, I mean, definitely there's some affiliation with what services they can access and how they do that, but it's the nature of addiction itself. It's like trying to quit smoking. That's the best way I can put it, because some people can relate to that. You do it once, you have success, you fall back into that pattern. Oftentimes people say they don't exactly know why they did. It's just really difficult to get over and through and on the other side of addiction forever and ever. So it does make sense, the nature of the disease, that people will come back. The good news is that they do come back. We still do see upwards to 50%. What we use the term is recidivism. I don't really like that term, but that's consistent for the research for addictions across this country and elsewhere in the world. Yes, we can always use more supports, and I think it's more about different supports than necessarily more, that we need to be more creative. People don't I think about leaving my home and having to go and stay somewhere else in a bed that's not familiar to me, and I'm feeling really unwell. That's a big thing. And so or having to leave my community. And if I can stay in my community and something can be more tailored to what I'm looking for to support me, I think that that's the ticket here, is that we just continue to get very creative together about how to support people.
Thank you. Director Hamer Jackson.
Yeah, great work. I really believe that if we had, we've got probably, and I'm going to make it clear, we do need harm reduction. I understand that. But I think that if we could get more focused on recovery focus, like what you're doing, we have probably 10, 15 buildings in Kamloops that have harm reduction. And I really believe that if we had more of yourselves, we would free up a lot of space for people that are struggling with mental health and addictions. And some of these units could be used for recovery focused only facilities. And if we could have more of your facilities, and for people over 24 too, I think it could change our community. Thank you. Community, TNRD also.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Getz.
I just want to say thank you for your work as a person that has family members that have used your facilities. To answer Director Sarai's comment, 5 to 13 days of detox is doable, but unless there's a 90, 120-day living out after, it's 100% failure. The member that we have visited Sage and whatnot several times until he got 90 days. And then he has been sober now for 5 years. But without that extra step, he failed 100% of the time.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I just have one comment. I didn't add in my little presentation that we have actually given out 47 awards and we have raised over $100,000 that has been all given back in awards to those recipients. And we are looking for donations and our posters are coming out. Sorry, I have to promote that as well. Thank you so much.
Director Bass.
Leanne, could you just take a couple of minutes to talk about the successes of some of the student people that you've had go through the program? Like I'm thinking of Heather and I can't remember the paramedic's name.
Sure, Dale, I absolutely can do that. So some of our recipients that you may be familiar with, one of them that I'm sure you'll all remember is Catherine McFarland. Catherine was the executive director of Away Home Kamloops, and she received 2 of our bursaries early on in her career. We are so proud of everything that she has achieved with Away Home Kamloops, and we continue to light the way and carry on her legacy. Another person that has received our bursary is Andrea Haugen Hurst. Andrea received our bursary 4 years in a row. She has become an emergency room nurse, and recently, the last couple of years, she's gone into nursing and corrections. She comes out and actually speaks about receiving the bursary and presentations with me, as do many of our other recipients. Dana Chapman was one of our recent recipients. She's become a new social worker here in Kamloops. Congratulations to Dana. Heather Cameron is, wow, how do I even explain Heather? Heather originally started the Family Tree Family Center here in Kamloops, which continues. Heather is an incredible woman who is also doing a lot of stuff with addiction and pregnancy and supporting people throughout the province. Nancy Johnson is one of our recipients. Nancy received her PhD in California. She started out by receiving our recipient or being a recipient of our bursary, and she carried on to explore and do work within the California area, supporting people with the opiate crisis, and she is now in private practice in California. We have one bursary recipient that I can't name right now, but she is currently working on her law degree. We have several recipients who have become social workers, nurses, many of them who have done their HUMS degree and then carry on to do social work. We have a commercial pilot, a fellow who completed his mechanics certification.
So it would be fair to say it's a successful program. And they've
Thank you,
gone
Gail.
on, and many of them go on to serve in the field that served them.
Absolutely. One of the most important parts of choosing our recipients is their desire to pay it forward in this community. And I also want to acknowledge that this bursary is only available to people who go to school here or who live here. They can go to school elsewhere as long as they have been from Kamloops. We will support that as well. But we really recognize that the money is generated here in this city, and we really want to support people from here. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Well, thank you again for presenting to us today. It was lovely to hear from you, and thank you for everything that you do for our community.
Thank you for having us.
Our next presentation is Mr. Trevor Bohe from the Ministry of Forests. Sir, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, esteemed directors. Appreciate being invited here to talk. So White to Quiet Up, Trevor Bohe, Rask West. Yes, my name is Trevor Bohe. I'm a Director of All Hazards Response Coordination for the BC Ministry of Forests. And I'm here to talk to you today about post-wildfire natural hazard risk analysis. Alrighty, so I'll just talk a little bit about what this program entails, and it's important to talk a little bit about what it doesn't involve. First Nations involvement is always very important, and sort of timelines for the program and sort of next steps. So what happens after we undertake these analysis? Yeah, so after a wildfire, the Ministry of Forest does have a memorandum of understanding between us and BC Wildfire Service to assess all the fires that happen in BC. This is done by a geomorphologist, works for the Ministry of Forests, and they take a look at the fires while they're going on, and they're really putting their mind towards whether or not these fires have the potential to have, I guess, deleterious effects afterwards on the landscape, and particularly with an eye towards debris flows and landslides. We do put these reports on a website called climatereadybc.gov.bc.ca, and I invite you to check it out at some point at your leisure. There's a lot of information on there, and it's getting larger and larger every day. We plan to put information on floods, floodplains, that sort of thing. Drought information, but I guess the first thing that ended up being populated on this website were the post-wildfire natural hazard risk analysis. So you'll find a hub on that site, and you can navigate through it, and it's web-based, much like the TNRD mapping tool. You just cruise around in the map, and you'll see an icon for the various fires, and you can click on it and download the reports. So following a fire, I think a lot of people know this, but we do have changes in vegetation. We can end up having what are called hydrophobic soil. So essentially, if a fire burns incredibly hot, the vegetation and the roots and structure in the soil burn to such an extent that the mineral soil is altered, and it can repel water for a period of time. And what that means is precipitation that might ordinarily be somewhat innocuous would then concentrate in some of these draws, and without percolating down into the ground, and can end up entraining a lot of debris, soil and sediment, and causing a debris flow or a debris torrent. And again, it goes without saying too, obviously, if the forest cover is burned, and then we have a reduction in the ability of the lack of those trees to take up the moisture and hold it. So what we typically look at are areas that have burned with moderate or high fire intensity, and we also look at steep areas, and we're looking at areas that are near populated areas or transportation corridors. So essentially what we're concerned about is the risk of these debris flows and slides to people first and foremost, or major infrastructure. We're aware that many of these fires are large, and they have effects on the ecosystem. They could increase sedimentation to salmon-bearing streams, for example. All of these things are important, but our scope of work is fairly tightly constrained to risk to human beings and major infrastructures. We want to know if a debris flow is going to take out, obviously, town, people's homes, water, storage facilities, dams, highways, that sort of thing. So what'll happen there is essentially, once our geomorphologist takes a look at these fires and screens them, they'll slate certain ones for further study, and that's a bit of a two-pronged approach for the most part. We'll do typically internally a reconnaissance scale assessment, and those typically happen as soon as the fire is declared safe, but we try and do those while there's still wildfire assets on the ground. And we can typically hop in a helicopter with our experts, take a look around the fire, get an idea of the burn severity, and determine if we want to move these fires forward for additional study. So at this point, we would typically issue a short memo, and you'll see some of those on that website as well, referred to as reconnaissance scale memos. They could recommend that no further action is required, or they can recommend that a detailed study be undertaken. The detailed studies are quite a lengthy study. We can do them internally, but we typically have staffing capacity issues. So in order to get them done a little more quickly, we would pay for a qualified consultant to do that work. So this involves a little bit of procurement on our part, and we would have consultant do these studies, and they range in costs from anywhere from $10,000 to $90,000, sort of depending on the size and scope. Typically, by the time the procurement process is done, we wouldn't have these consultants in place till around September or October. And these reports and studies take about 10 weeks to complete. I know that's a long time for people to wait for results, especially if they're nervous, if they're going to have some issues. And we know we get situations like atmospheric rivers that tend to kind of come down in November. So what we do ask is that if the consultant identifies anything that really has them worried, we're not going to wait those 10 weeks for that report to get issued, sometime in December, or when people are on vacation, or early January when it's already snowed. So they would write an interim memo, and we'll get that information to the affected party quickly. And that did happen, for example, at the McDougall Creek wildfire that impacted West Kelowna this year. So the province disseminates these reports to First Nations and local government through emergency management and climate readiness. We do it that way, even though the reports are undertaken by the Ministry of Forest. We have our partner ministry disseminate those because they've got the sort of most recent and best up-to-date contacts for the various communities and emergency responders in those communities. So I'd work with staff from Jamie's office, for example, if this was in the TNRD, to get that information out to the TNRD in a timely manner. What we can do is provide our consultant to explain the results to the community, so we understand that these are technical reports and not everyone can easily understand them. So we're happy to arrange a town hall meeting where we could discuss these reports if that's needed. And every once in a while, we'll go back and do studying an area we might have decided, an area was borderline and may not need some additional study, but we always reserve the right to kind of change our mind. So there's been a couple instances where we've gone back, half a year later and decided to do a study on an area that we originally weren't going to. So here are just some stats, and the lines in red are correspond to years that were sort of bad fire years in British Columbia, and unfortunately, we're seeing that's we have had more bad fire years than non in recent years. And based on some of the conference calls I've been on lately, including one this morning with Environment Canada, we're looking like we're really steaming into another really bad year for wildfire and drought. They're saying it's going to be analogous to 2003 probably, which we all recall was, again, an epic year for wildfire. And probably like 2021, like heat dome conditions at times as well. So definitely concerned. So won't read these out, but you can see that in the larger fire years, we've done quite a number of these reports. We've only have the last 3 years on that website, but if anyone knows of a fire that happened prior to this and wants to see a report on it, you just let our office know and we can provide that. The risk for debris flows typically persist it's sort of worse in the first 1 to 3 years after a wildfire. And between the 5th and the 10th year after a wildfire, the risk is reduced. So, and the risk is far less after the 10th year. So typically you'll see us removing some of the signage we might put up to warn the public of a wildfire risk after that 10-year window. So what the program's not, I think it's important to just kind of reiterate that we have a limited scope. So while it would be great if we could do a study of an entire 30,000 hectare fire, some areas where we don't have a lot of people concentrated, we're just not able to have our consultants sort of spend their time sort of working in those areas. So yeah, it's definitely not a watershed study or any sort of report that talks about the health of the watershed. We don't look at risk to hunting areas, logging roads. Even though it's important to people's livelihood, we don't look at risk to hay crops, irrigation lines, or fences, that sort of thing. In British Columbia, we've got a lot of folks living on floodplains and alluvial fans, and that's just a factor of what I would say our tricky geography is in the province of British Columbia, where there's not a lot of sort of buildable flat land. And so unfortunately, you know, in the many decades past, the populace has tended to concentrate in areas that are already areas at risk, including you know, the many alluvial fans that we see and the floodplain itself. We do make the odd exception every once in a while. So we have undertaken studies that have threatened areas of cultural concern to our First Nations. And we have, even though we don't look at every impact in the environment in some areas, such as the Bush Creek fire recently we have included impact to the, you know, world-renowned Adams River salmon run, because that is just so important for food security. Yeah, so again, just talking a little bit about First Nations involvement. Our team does liaise with the BC Wildfire Service, incident management teams, and the forest districts to understand the First Nations concerns. You know, and we do sort of work together with our partners to understand what might be in and out of scope. So it's like everything is always a bit of a gray area. We're not going to say no right off the hop. If someone really feels that something needs to be looked at that we originally haven't determined we want to look at, we're happy to hear that argument and consider it. And essentially the way it works after these reports are issued, you're going to get a lot of questions from the people that live in there as what now, what does this mean? And it's different for every location. So we're seeing some regional districts that have been heavily impacted by fire, having their development groups mandate that additional geohazard assessments are undertaken before burned homes are rebuilt. That's one option. And some districts are doing that and some aren't. We're also, I also want to state that the community, so that in this case, the TNRD's window into accessing government resources to help address the effects of wildfire is through the EMCR community recovery tables. So EMCR did set up a 2-year 2023 wildfire community recovery team, a 48-person strong team that's working with all of the wildfire impacted communities and having very regular meetings. And that's where you know, individual residents and property owners would go to their local government, express their concerns, and then the local government would go in turn to those committees and those community recovery tables and bring up those concerns, and then try and bring the strength of other government programs to bear if at all possible. Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about a lot of this stuff already here. Sometimes we do skip that recon stage. So if a fire is just so obviously so large, and it's burned homes and it's an area that's steep, so for example, the McDougall Creek fire and the Bush Creek fire, we weren't going to waste time doing a reconnaissance scale study when it was patently obvious that we would need to move to the detailed study. So just trying to shave a bit of time off of that as well. Yeah, so here's just a list of some of the fires that we've done in the area. Of course, not all of these are in the TNRD, but you can kind of take a look and see some of the fires that were selected to move forward, and we've received all these reports and disseminated them to the communities, and we're working with local governments on communicating our results to the to the individual property owners through town hall meetings. Oops, sorry. Does anyone have any questions about the program at all?
I had Director Stamer, I've got Director Houghton, Director Stamer, Director Houghton, Director Thorpe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for your presentation, Trevor. A couple of questions that come to mind. I mean, run it through us on the recon side of things. I mean, normally you would be doing recon after the fire season in the fall. You'd already be doing a partial slope analysis with the computers and everything else to look at potential. Then you're gonna have it covered in snow, and then we're gonna have a very short window of opportunity between the snow melt and then the consequences of freshet. So my question is, how much of this information is gonna be in real time where we can actually access the data and not necessarily go to these community meetings or things like that? So where do we find that data?
Yeah, that's correct, Director. Like I said, if there are in areas where we're really indicate that there's a high risk and high potential for a slide, we do communicate that to the local government through their emergency program right off the hop. So and then we do look at that. So for example, when those atmospheric rivers came about, and I'll use an example from the CSRD, but from the Bush Creek fire, our consultant, did give us a call and say they were concerned about a certain area. We were all in the emergency management world watching those November atmospheric rivers come. We'd gotten about as much advance notice as you get for those 4 or 5 days typically. And the consultant was able to run one of their internal models and work with us in the CSRD to determine if, for example, we needed to evacuate people. In this case, we didn't, based on their modeling. So, yeah, when it comes to sort of undertaking, potential treatment on the ground, there is, there are sort of limited treatments. There is seeding, mulching. They have some positive effect, but they're not a magic bullet to stop these types of hazards. So we have undertaken them, for example, in the, I guess throughout March, I think we had a very quickly undertaken program just as the snow was melting, but before freshets were underway, to do quite a bit of seeding in the Highway 8 area, for example, and try and put a little seed on the ground to help defray potential impacts in that corridor. So yeah, there's definitely, you're right, there's a very small window. We typically, the fire season is usually not over until September, and then we can start getting snow in, as you know, around Halloween, and then it's difficult to get a lot done. But yeah, everyone sort of works together through the forest districts who are out on the land base rehabilitating fire guards as quickly as possible, and we try and hit high risk areas.
Dan, if I may, on the second part of that would be, where do we get access to that information if we've got critical zone areas? Is that in any mapping, or is that in any reviews? And also, second to that is probably near and dear to Director Rain's heart is how much of this steep slope stabilization part of your report can be used for property owners? Because I understand, there's been issues in the past where property owners have had to do their own slope stabilization after a forest fire. Where is the government able to help us in that process, knowing full well that certain slopes are not going to be identified, but the more severe ones are?
Yeah, so the reports are on the Climate Ready BC website, and as soon as they're emailed to the local government via EMCR, they're put up on that website. It sometimes within a day or two, and and then it's just a matter of getting the information out. Typically, what we ask is the local government put the links to the report on their web pages. If there's been a large fire, we find that most local governments would have some sort of a community recovery forum or web page on the go that citizens would be kind of used to going to or seeing, as they work through all aspects of that response. So we find that we like to work with our excellent partners in local government on that. The public's definitely able to use the report. It's it is for public dissemination. So if they were to, we encourage them to look at it and make informed decisions about their property redevelopment. Sometimes it might be as simple if you've lost a home in a fire and you've got a large property, just being aware of where those draws are, where those potential flow path is for some of that risk, and just moving a home to a less risky area, right? So that's always an option. Sorry, what was that? Some of your other questions, Director?
Sorry, I just mentioned like what part of that slope stabilization assessment can be used by the property owners. As I alluded to, Director Rain previously had concerns on some of the additional costs that these property owners are having to incur because of slope stabilization work that has to be done after a fire. I'm just wondering how much of the work that the government is doing is able to be transposed and used in those processes.
So I think that, any subsequent consultant that might be hired is able to use the report to help guide their study. But you can imagine if you're getting a study done on a large fire unit, and we're looking at, for example, we might look at 15 alluvial fans, and our consultant will indicate that they're sort of high, medium, or low risk. There might be another 15 homes within that fan, and the risk may vary from home to home. And, it's just got to do with the granularity of that study. So that study is probably a little bit too coarse for the individual homeowner to make a lot of use of. Often case, they may have to get a more detailed study to sort of really drill down to the nuts and bolts of the risk to their particular property.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Houghton?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Trevor, I just noticed on that last slide, I didn't see the Rossmore Lake fire on there. I know Director Grenier and I both would be concerned about that one. Has there been any studies or work on the Rossmore Lake fire?
So we did have our geomorphologist take a look at the Rossmore Lake fire. And he felt that we know obviously that it was, it had a couple of elements of the three elements we look at. It was high burn severity in certain areas. Of course, it's very near to people and infrastructure, but it just didn't have the degree of steepness that we were concerned about for that fire. So for that reason, we did look at Rossmore, thought about doing a recon assessment, and then even in the end decided that probably wasn't a good use of our limited resources. It just felt like it wasn't, it just wasn't going to have the potential to generate debris flows. Yeah.
Director Thorpe?
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. Number one, the Stein Mountain Fire, that primarily hit Lytton First Nations, but it also did hit some of my residents in the TNRD. Are those residents going to be made aware of that report as well, not just the First Nations?
So the TNRD has been made aware of the report. It was sent to the TNRD the same time it was sent to the First Nations. I don't know where it goes from there, but.
Okay. I guess I'll be asking staff for a copy. My second question has to do with the 2021 Lytton Creek wildfire. and the impacts it had along the Highway 8 corridor and the Highway 1 corridor. I'm assuming that a detailed study was done. My question is that we're still having ongoing issues along 8 and 1, and how is this study helping to mitigate that?
Yeah, so we, for that fire, we initially slated just the Nickerman area for study and did that work. And then you would have seen my slide where I kind of talked about how we sometimes change our mind. So that was the area that we changed our mind on. So initially we and based on advice, not just internally, but from the consultants, it wasn't thought that there would be a risk. And of course, we were proven wrong with the slides that did come down afterwards that went over the highway and through some folks' hay fields and near to their homes. So yeah, we did go back afterwards and do those studies. So the studies are out there, they do exist. And we did do the aerial seeding in the Highway 8 area, and there was some done in the Nickerman area as well. In Nickerman, we also did a lot of work fixing the drainage on a Forest Service road, just to make sure that that wasn't going to focus any water coming down and focus it onto a couple of buildings on the reserve community. So yeah, that's where we're at for at this point for those two studies. Like, there are no further studies being undertaken.
Director Hamer Jackson.
Yeah, I think I'll leave my question for after. I'll just give you some information we were talking about. Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bohe? No. All right. Well, thank you very much, Trevor, for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Coach Stam.
And thank you for knowing the difference between a magic bullet and a silver bullet. I appreciate that. Silver bullets are for killing werewolves and vampires. All right, we move along to item 8.3, building infraction. We have a stop work order for a property in Birch Island, and we do have an opportunity for the owner to make representation to the board. Do we have anyone here to speak to this item? No. All right. And we have item 8.4, building infraction. We have a stop work order, addition of a suite on Holloway Drive in area J. Do we have anyone here to speak to this? No. Move on to unfinished business. Item 9.1, stop work order, multiple alterations to an existing single-family dwelling on Birch Island. We do have a recommendation. Director Ranta, thank you. Vice Chair Smith, thank you. Any discussion on this? Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just the staff, looking through the report, when we have opportunities through the process where staff is in consultation with the owners, is there any notes attached to the file so that we know, when we're going through this process, the meeting with the homeowner was amicable or it wasn't? And, is there any way that we know, I'm following the process in this, and there was including a meeting at the District of Clearwater. Is that relevant in these cases, Mr. Kraus, or is that just extenuating circumstances?
Through the chair, we do have those kind of notes in our file, but we don't include it for the board. Not sure if that level of detail is really needed. At the end of the day, what we're trying to show is we're giving multiple opportunities. We're not running straight to the board. We're trying to work with people. But when we see that it just can't get anywhere and we feel that the district's at risk, we need to come forward with the recommendation.
Director Sarai. All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this item? We do have a motion. All those in favor? Opposed, if
Yay.
any? Director Blackwell?
Yay.
Yay, thank you. Someone had to go there. That is carried. We move on to 9.2, building infraction on a property in electoral area J. We do have a recommendation. Director Laird, thank you. Second by Director Ranta. Discussion. Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. And Alex, we've talked about this. I know this house, I know this owner. I think it's important for the board to know that the house is listed for sale. And we have an obligation to notify the prospective purchaser as well as working with the owner. And I understand that the owner's been in several times to initiate a process to remedy it, but we have an obligation, particularly given that the house is for sale. I wonder if you could just speak to that. Thank you.
Through the chair, yes. So in this case, it was upon complaint. We visited the property and found that there was a suite. So now we know there's an area that has a dwelling unit that doesn't meet code or may not meet code because we don't have a building permit for it. So we followed up with the owner. And only recently, after sending this letter saying that it's coming for a notice, did they start cooperating and provide some initial application forms that weren't quite complete. Given that it's for sale, it's critical timing wise that we get the notice on. That's our recommendation. That doesn't mean that it can't be taken off. That simply means that if it goes for sale, the prospective purchaser will know that it's on there. And that often precipitates them to come in and work with us. In this case, if they apply for building permit application, we come out and inspect and see the work has been done to bring it back to what was originally approved with the suite gone, we will gladly remove the notice, and that can be done quite quickly. But this puts it back on the owner and reduces our risk so that if it is sold and we knew about it, we've put our warning on title.
Thank you. Follow-up, Director Grenier, or you're good?
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? On the question then, all those in favor?
Yay.
Opposed, if any? That is. That is carried. Are you zoned to have livestock on your property, Director Blackwell? Just asking.
I do have a sheep herding dog as the pet in the house right now, and he carries a little stuffed sheep around, but I don't know if that's considered as livestock at this point.
No, I think you're good. Move on to 11.1. We have a report from the Fraser Valley Regional District, and we do have a staff recommendation attached to that. Whoops, did I? Oops, I skipped ahead. I was so excited to get ahead that I just moved over this one. So we have 10.1. We have zoning amendment bylaw number 2839, electoral area B. We do have a staff recommendation. Director Ranta, thank you. Seconded by Director Thorpe. Discussion. All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Opposed, if any?
Yay, in
Thank
favor.
you. That is carried. All right, now we move on to referral response number REF 719 from Fraser Valley Regional District. We do have a recommendation. Director Rain moves that recommendation. Thank you. Second by Vice Chair Smith. Any discussion, questions, comments? On the question then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Move on to reports 12.1.1 utility rates bylaw number 2840. We do have 3 recommendations. Director Laird, seconded by Director Sarai. Thank you. Discussion? No. On the question then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. We have a second recommendation. Director Laird, thank you. Director Smith seconds. Discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? Carried. And we have a third recommendation. Director Getz, seconded by Director Ranta. Any discussion? On the question, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? Carried. Item 12.1.2 Agriculture Advisory Commission appointments. We do have a recommendation. Director Sarai, second by Director Houghton. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Recommendation that both these gentlemen be reappointed, or one be reappointed and one be appointed to serve on the Agriculture Advisory Commission. All those in favor?
Favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. We have a report from Manager of People and Engagement, Ms. Ellison, on remuneration bylaw 2024 rate approval. We do have a recommendation to choose from. Director Laird. So you're moving the first of the three, the 4.0%. All right, thank you very much. Second by Vice Chair Smith. Is there any discussion here? No, so the recommendation is that the board approve the January 1st, 2024 annual change to remuneration at 4%, the same increase as applied for January 1st, 2023. All right, no discussion? On the question then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Item 12.1.4, and Director Haywood, if you could just give us the reason you're recusing yourself, please. Oh, you have to say why. No, Director, oh. She's still a member of the North Thompson Fall Fair Rodeo Association, for those who didn't hear. Thank you very much, Director Hayward.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay, we should probably wait till Director Hayward leaves the room, but awesome.
did.
Thank you, Director Stamer, seconded by Director Houghton. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this recommendation? No discussion? All right, on the question, then all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. And move on to item 12.1.5 TNRD appointments to the Wells Gray Community Society and the Tourism Wells Gray Association Board. We have two recommendations here. Can they both be done at the same time, Mr. Corporate Officer, or do they need to be separate?
I think if everyone is completely content with them being a single vote, they could be taken as a single vote. It's, yeah, just if there was any dispute over either one of them, we would probably recommend they be separated out. So it depends on the level of consensus.
All right. So Director Thorpe, are you going to move both of the recommendations to get as one lump? Thank you. And they are being seconded by Director Stamer as a duo. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Right. On the question, then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. 12.1.6 Indigenous Skills Employment and Training Program. We do have a staff recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you, Director Sarai, seconded by Vice Chair Smith. Any discussion on this? No. On the question, then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Move on to 12.1.7 Committee Terms of Reference, Chair Terms. Now, just as clarification, we are not talking about the chair of this board, which is legislated that we have elections for the chair and vice chair of this entire board every year. We can't change that or tamper with it. This is for the 5 committees, I believe it is, where it is unclear how long the term of the chair and the vice chair are.
Can we make a recommendation then?
And just let me, we can do a blanket. All 5 of these are going to be exactly the same. We can have 1 or 2 of them different from the other 3 if you want. It's entirely up to the board's discretion. So if someone wants to kickstart things by making a motion. So elect a chair and vice chair every 2 years.
Every 2 years, I think it seems to work quite well.
All right, because right now the term of the appointments to the committees is every 2 years. So this would bring the election for the chair and vice chair of each committee to every 2 years as well. So everything would align. So that's what Director Laird is proposing. Director Stamer is seconding it.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on this? So this would not only mean that the appointments are for 2 years for the actual body of the committee, but the chair and vice chair would be serving for 2 years as well. Director Stamer.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's important for any of the committee chairs and vice chairs to at least get a handle on what their responsibilities are. And I think 1 year wouldn't be long enough. And I think it's more than fair if you split up, we have a 4-year term. So then we are actually splitting it up, and then it's to the wishes of the board, whether we want to continue with the committee chairs and co-chairs or not. So I think it works very well, and I would support that recommendation.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No? On the question, then all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? Thank you. That is carried. 12.1.8 Kamloops North Shore Library room lease. We do have a recommendation. Director Getz, thank you. Seconded by Director Hall. Discussion. Director Laird?
I was wondering where the $1,000 a month was coming from. Is it out of an existing budget, or where are the funds coming from? That they're asking for learning.
No, they're paying us.
Oh, pardon me. I agree. See,
He
I'm
was
not a
wait-
bad politician. I can make mine out just like that.
Director Laird was wavering then until he found out that we get the money. Okay. Director Stamer supplemental.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So just a question to staff then, does that $12,000 you go strictly back into the library budget, or is there a specific purpose for that?
Thank you, Director. Through the chair, I believe that would just go straight into the library's budget for facilities purposes.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? On the question, then all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That's carried. We have the draft minutes from 2 committee meetings here. Does anyone have any questions or comments on those? Anyone on those committees want to highlight anything there? All right, we move on to correspondence, item 14.1, action requested. We do have a request from Tourism Kamloops. They're asking for a letter of support. Director Newstader?
Move to send a letter of support.
And seconded by Director Sarai. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this letter of support for Tourism Kamloops? All right, interesting to see what they come up with. On the question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. We have a number of items of information correspondence. They are for information unless someone wants to break one of them out and have a chat about it. Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to be long-winded, but I'd like to be able to pull 14.2.1 so I can ask a question to staff. And I'd also like to be able to pull 14.2.3 for that same purpose.
Okay, certainly. You can ask a question.
Thank you for that. On the Pritchard water usage, can staff bring me up to speed? I know there's been lots of discussion when it comes to water meters. I find it interesting that even some of the lower mainland people are starting to push back on water meters when, you know, we've had water meters in my community for 25 years. So can we get clarification from staff with some of these water upgrades that we've had in Pritchard? Hasn't there already been a requirement for water meters, or where are we at with that? Because I thought that was an understood part of grant applications of water conservation, and the water meter is key to that. So can you give me a little bit of clarification on what this letter was about?
Yes, thank you through the chair. So answer the first part of your question. Yes, we have water meters in all TNRD water systems. They were funded through a grant process, and all of the installation of those was completed about 2 years ago. This specific letter is related to the requesting water meters on a strata property, which we do not install at our expense, and we do not bill individual strata units. We bill the strata corporation as a whole. So that was our response, clarifying that even though we understand her desire to have water meters, that it would be up to the strata to impose that within their properties. So the entire property is metered and billed based on usage, and then it's up to the strata to decide if they're going to require or install them, which in this case they haven't yet.
And you wanted to ask about 14.23.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. To staff, looking at the, I believe, is this the one with the requirements for public access to Kamloops Lake and the adjoining marina? Can I get an update on really where we are with public access there? I'm not familiar with that. I'm reading through the report and it doesn't specify. It sounds like they're working on it. So is there public access, or there's going to be public access? Just wanted for clarification on that.
So specifically on this, what happened is last March, the board directed staff to work with developers and the province to find out where these OICs are at, these ordering councils, to determine whether or not we can start working on some zoning matters. And that's really what prompted our question to Ministry of Agriculture. And what they came back with is, as you can see, that the 3 ordering councils remain in force. And now they're saying the one outstanding requirement for public access hasn't been met. And that's a requirement of the ministry on the developer. And so they're saying that they are following up on that. So from the perspective of this, we're leaving it up to the ministry to continue to push and get that requirement met, as it was a requirement of theirs as part of the ordering councils.
I may have supplement, would staff like us to give them a little nudge in regard in a letter to that effect, or what would staff like us to do? And I'm asking is, it's been quite a long time and they still haven't done it. So if you don't want to answer that question, I make a motion that we send a letter to the ministry to make sure that they enforce this and start making plans so that we have proper public access to Kamloops Lake that was part of the development plan in the first place.
All right, so Director Stamer has made a motion that we provide a letter to the ministry asking them to expedite the process. Is that what? Oh, great. Thank you very much. And it's seconded by Director Sarai. So Director Laird.
At our EA meeting this morning, we had highways, we had a discussion with the local highways, and they did bring up access to Kamloops Lake, and I maybe through to CFO Hildebrand. What was it that highways informed us of this morning, Scott, with access to Kamloops Lake?
Thank you through Chair Roden. We had discussions in the past about with Savinaw, with electoral in Director Grandy's area, where residents were concerned about some easements that go down to the lake where they were taken over by private property owners and vehicles were parked there and things were being put in that area, and they want to free up that space to access that lake and take back that easement from Ministry of Transportation. So staff, Mr. Vieira, and our group would be working with Ministry of Transportation to try to prioritize those and figure out which ones make the most sense to ensure there is public access. This is a different topic, though. This is a different discussion.
Thank you, Director Sarai.
Just a quick question to staff. Is this a public access for walking, or is it enough that it's going to be a boat launch in the future? What kind of access is it, and what what is that gonna bring back to us for maintenance and upkeep if it does come back and we get that access granted?
I think under the agreement, it was to, I'm just reading it here, construct and dedicate a public access road to Kamloops Lake in the location of the marina. That's the wording that's before me. So I think that's what the obligation was on the developer. I think the outstanding piece or the unknown here is the mechanics of what that looks like. Can this be a public road? If it's a public road, it's a Ministry of Transportation's road, not TNRD's road. Does it meet ministry standards? So there's all these things that have to happen. It's kind of outside of our jurisdiction directly, but indirectly it is obviously part of the whole development. And so we are involved, but
If I may add, there would also be a rail crossing issue there as well, so that it's all part of that larger discussion that goes back multiple owners.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair. When the project was approved originally, there was something called the Perry Commission. Perry Commission pointed out that public access to Kamloops Lake was one of the most important things that they considered when they approved the project. When the project was built and the roads were dedicated, all of the roads were dedicated to the Ministry of Transportation, except that the Ministry of Transportation didn't want to take over this particular road, given its configuration at that time. It was then proposed that the TNRD consider taking it over, and at that time, the TNRD was not in a position to take over the road. There was concerns, just as has been expressed today, about the costs and associated implications if the TNRD took it over. Over the course of time, what has happened is that different developers and different interests have muddied the water with charges to use the road, whether to walk down the road, whether to park on the road, to access the beach. And so this letter clarifies that public access continues to be an important aspect of the Tobiano Resort community, and that commitment has to be fulfilled by those parties that are now in charge of that road, that beach, that railway crossing. So the physical attributes are in place to deal with public access. It's just who's going to ultimately hand over those things or provide easements, so on and so forth. So I think everybody is comfortable in my area that now that has been clarified by the province.
Thank you. So we do have a motion regarding this, which is that the TNRD write a letter to the ministry asking them to please expedite the process of lake access access to Kamloops Lake at Tobiano. Any further questions or comments on the question? Then all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Director Blackwell? In favor? Okay. I think we're safe in taking that as a yes. Thank you. All right, we move on to new business members. You will have found in your blue folder. What? Director Grenier?
I'd like to speak to 14.2.2.
14.2.2. All right, go ahead.
I gave a brief update to the electoral committee today. This is the disconnection of the Tronquil Valley area, Red Lake area by TELUS effective March 8. And this letter reports back from the province. I can update that the CRTC has opened up a file on this issue, and the CRTC in that file instructs TELUS not to disconnect by March 8. There's a series of correspondence for anybody that's interested. It's a public file, and the CRTC is exploring with TELUS and connecting communities alternative technologies while it ensures that that facility stay open. I can report that yesterday and today, residents have been contacted by TELUS to tell them that the disconnection is not going to happen. And that's essential for the seniors in the area that would be moving from a $30 charge to at least $170 charge. And that's very difficult, especially when we're dealing with housing, to tell people that are at that location that they are no longer going to have communication was something that the CRTC and others took into consideration. So welcome news indeed, and hope that we can press on with a cellular solution if that's possible.
Thank you very much. Director Smith.
Yes, Madam Chair, point of order. I don't see the CAO's verbal report. Did it get missed or did I miss it or?
Through you, Chair Roden, it was, I only do one per month and it's the second month when we have two meetings. And it was put on there by mistake, and the new copy that was refreshed reflected the proper agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions or comments? No? All right, so now we do move on to new business, and you will have received a letter in your blue folder from Director Al Rain, which he would like us to send under the signature of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District to the Federal Ministers of Housing and Finance. Now, if you have it in front of you, the third paragraph, which begins, "And whereas Kamloops acknowledges that Sun Peak," you want that taken out? For me? Oh, okay. Director Rain is recusing himself. So that third paragraph, while he's leaving, he would ask that that be taken out. So strike the third paragraph. Director Bass?
Editor Bass. Why can't we just take out Kamloops acknowledges that and say, and whereas Sun Peaks is a strong national international tourism destination? Because that's just simple fact and it's not putting it back on Kamloops.
I mean,
If I made
Director
a-
Rain has asked that it be taken out, so I don't know, I'm not understanding what his thought process is on that one. Probably because he does not want it, we cannot speak for Kamloops, we can only speak for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I'm saying just take out Kamloops, because we're stating what I believe the TNRD believes, which is that Sun Peaks is a strong national and international tourism destination. I think that's important.
Director Stamer?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with Director Bass and her assumption, but I think that if Director Rain is the one that is putting this letter forth, he's the one that is determining what's in the letter. So I wouldn't want to change his wishes, quite frankly. I will support this, knowing that I think Director Rain brings up some good points. It's not going to affect the TNRD as a whole, particularly when we start talking about, we know they've got some significant housing issues up there, and I know part of their support lies in the international community with being able to maintain that growth. So 2 points is that I would agree with what Director Bass has said, but I would like to follow the wishes of Director Rain. And if this is what's presented, I will support it.
And just with, again, Editor Roden here, the fourth, now third paragraph does reiterate the importance of it as an international tourism destination. So he might have felt that that was a little bit of redundancy there. And also there are a lot of whereases in here already. So I think
I hate
he
whereases.
felt that taking out one of the whereases was probably a good idea.
Yeah,
And I'm not guessing I did have this discussion with Director Rain, so.
So Editor Roden, I'm a retired editor now, so I don't care about redundancies, and I really hate whereases.
All right, so we have the amended letter with this that third paragraph now gone. We do have a motion that it be sent. Okay, Director Stamer, did you make the motion? And Director Bass seconds it. Does anyone else have any other questions? Director Sarai?
Thank you,
Question,
Chair,
comment?
Madam Chair. Just a question, and I'm not too familiar with the vacancy rate up in Sun Peaks, and I'm not gonna get into a debate here. But my one concern is if you have international buyers of properties and they leave it empty for 11 months or 10 months out of the year, and then it's only rented out, or they come in for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, that is hurting our local housing stock. Is that what the intent of this is to support international buyers? And do we have any, does Director Rain have any stats that prove that those houses are occupied 9 months out of the year, whether they're Airbnbs or are they helping, are they staying empty? That's my one concern. If they're staying empty, I have a problem with that.
Director Rain's concern was more that Sun Peaks, Apex, and there was one other, Silver Star possibly, are the only three ski destinations in the province to which this applies. The others are all not affected by this, and he feels it's unfair that Sun Peaks is being treated differently from the vast majority of the ski resorts in British Columbia. Director Stamer?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for that additional information because Director Rain can't speak to this and I certainly understand the concerns that Director Sarai has. I know many of these homes are designed with lockups. Anybody that's been up there, a lot of these homes already are designed with lockups. They're still doing the rental programs and things like that. So I don't think it's going to affect the housing. And I know that the community as a whole has worked as diligently as they can, particularly when it comes to housing for workers, because they know that they can't, if they can't house the workers, they can't get the workers. So I know that they've done everything they possibly can. And I agree with the assumption from the chair is that, you know, it's unfair that other communities like Whistler are able to do this and we aren't. So I think it's only fair to support this letter.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Director Getz, sorry, yes.
Just maybe somebody could clarify me, under the new Bill 44, 46, and 47, does this not alleviate short-term rentals in the province? Is this not what's going to be happening with lockups? I'm curious because that part needs to be addressed because it's going to be the new horizon as we move forward. Short-term rentals are going to no longer be accepted. So I'm just wondering if I missed something here or if resorts are exempt.
I can't speak to that. Is there anyone here who can? Mr. Kraus?
I can take a stab at it through the chair. There are certain exemptions for resorts, and there's also still going to be an allowance for local governments to, no, I think for Sun Peak's case, I think it's an exemption because it's a resort. Yeah.
And I have managed to find it. This is what Director Rain wrote to me. Sun Peaks is one of 3 ski areas caught in the federal foreign purchaser prohibition. All other ski areas in Canada were not included in the prohibition locations. However, Sun Peaks was identified as a census metropolitan area of Kamloops, and Silver Star and Apex communities were identified as census agglomerations of Vernon and Penticton. Effectively, StatsCan has identified Sun Peaks as part of the Kamloops Census metropolitan area, and thus we have the foreign purchaser ban the same as Kamloops. Director Blackwell?
Yes, thank you. It's my understanding that resort municipalities are exempt from the STR legislation, but that could be something different. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further questions or comments? And the motion is that the TNRD board write this letter or send this letter to the federal ministers of housing and finance. On the question then, all those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Director Hamer-Jackson. All right, is there any other new business from members? Director Sao.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share with the board that Birch Island in Area A is undergoing a fire protection expansion from Vavenby to cover community Birch Island. You know, I think it's going to be a good reference in the future for other electoral areas, considering expansion of their fire services. And also that it was noted during the community wildfire preparedness roundtable meeting by Fraser Basin Council in Clearwater the other week, one thing that was shared by Chief Savage from Blackpool Fire Department is the establishment of dry hydrants. He's gone through the process. It's quite an extensive process to have an intake in the river. And after they're established, they're considered full functional hydrants, according to Office of Fire Commissioner. So it could be useful for other communities along riverfronts for fire protection in the future. I think TNRD staff, Jason, would probably have all the details should your community be interested. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Getz?
Yes, I'd just like to pass on that in our community, Sherry Peterson, who is our fire chaplain, has been named fire chaplain of the year for 2023. She is also the driving force behind Samaritan's Purse. And her crew come and pray for me once a month, which is probably not enough, but we'll get by. And I do appreciate the fact that she was nominated by her peers. It's a very prestigious award, and she didn't want anybody to know about it, so I said I wouldn't say anything, so.
So we all know who around this table is very good at keeping secrets. Thank you very much, Director Getz. Anyone else? Do we have any notices of motion? Thank you. Question period. Do we have any questions from any members of the public who might be watching or online? No. All right, we have need of a closed meeting under section 91C of the Community Charter, Labor Relations or other employee relations. So I will make that motion. Seconded by Director Smith. Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, carried. So a 5-minute recess, please.